Excellent. We are live, and welcome to everybody who is listening online and joining us tonight. So I declare the meeting open at 7:08 p.m. So just before we commence, for the community who are listening, one of our councillors is participating in the meeting remotely in order to follow COVID-19 principles around public gathering. Welcome, Councillor Saranowski online. Members of the public that have registered to speak by audio-visual link on an agenda item are asked to keep your microphone muted and video off until I invite you to speak. Speakers will not be able to present material as part of their speaking time or share their screen. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette, including debate on an item will commence only once we have a mover and a seconder for the item other than a mayoral minute. The mover has a right of reply before the motion is put to a vote. Raise your hand to indicate you wish to speak in order to determine the speaking order based on the hands raised. On commencement of you speaking on a motion or amendment, please indicate clearly whether you are speaking for or against the motion or amendment. You can speak for up to 5 minutes for or against a motion, and similar for any amendment. For the efficiency of the meeting, it is not necessarily to repeat matters which you agree and raised by a previous speaker. I just remind councillors to mute your microphone while not speaking and have your camera turned on. Use the hand icon from the top of the toolbar, and it's a little bit small for me to see the hand icon, Councillor Saranowski, so just call out if you would like to speak to anything, please. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and the public clearly hear all speakers, we will assist by muting microphones if required. I also remind everyone that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. So before we commence, I'd just like to acknowledge the land on which we are meeting tonight and pay our respect to elders past and present on which this meeting takes place, and acknowledges the Gadigal and the Bidjigal clans of the Sydney Basin. I'd now like to invite Father Maurizio of St Therese Catholic Church Mascot to open the meeting in prayer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to all. May the Lord who went about doing good be with you all. God is love. In the desire to make us share in his love, he sent his Son into the world to come to our aid and in gentle kindness to help those who were in need. In his great love for all of us, Christ said that whatever we do for the least among us, we do for him. He called those who show mercy blessed of his Father and promised them eternal life. Let us then pray for the Lord's richest blessings on the members of this council, who were elected and devoted to doing good to the community. O Lord, you want all people to share in the blessing you have brought. Warm the hearts of the members of this council so that, moved by your love, they may gladly devote themselves to the listening to and to the assisting of the people in their jurisdiction and beyond, especially those most in need. This morning I was also informed of the death of our devoted staff members, Scott Field. May I ask that we pause in prayer for reflection for a moment as we pray in gratitude for his life of service to the people of this council. Our thoughts and prayers to also reach his family and friends who mourn his passing. May he rest in peace. As servants concerned with the public good of the people, may I also ask that we join the human community in praying for peace. Peace in our hearts and peace in the world. That a solution may be found to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and all countries affected by various conflicts at this time. Blessed are you, Lord God of mercy, who through your Son gave us a marvelous example of charity and the great commandment of love for one another. Send down your blessing tonight on these your servants, who so generously devote themselves to helping others. When they are called in time of need, let them faithfully serve you in their neighbor. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Just passing on our condolences to Scott's wife Susie, his family and friends. Scott Field was council's manager of sport and recreation who recently passed away, and he was a much loved member of staff, and many of us had a lot to do with him in his role, and he will certainly be dearly missed by many of us. And I'd just like to ask that we stand and give a minute's silence to remember Scott. Thank you, everyone. We now move to item 4, which is apologies and attendance. So we have received an apology from Councillor McDougall. There are no other apologies. Everyone else is here. Would someone like to move and second the apology? Moved Councillor Nargilly, seconded Councillor Jansen. All in favour say aye. Against? I declare the motion carried. Where some, as we mentioned, we've got Councillor Saranowski attending online, and we just would like to move and second that that be accepted. So moved Councillor Nargilly, seconded Councillor Awada. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare it carried.
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
Yes?
there's a late arrival from Councillor McDougall.
Sorry? Okay, yeah, if we'll
That's fine,
amend the minutes if he arrives. Thank you. We're now up to item number 5, disclosures of interest. I remind councillors that you should also notify the General Manager in advance of the meeting of any disclosures of interest so that the Minutes Secretary can prepare them on the screen. We have 2 councillors that have indicated that they will disclose an interest on an item being discussed this evening. I will ask each councillor in turn to confirm each of these conflicts and then open the floor should anyone else like to add any conflicts. So, Councillor Saranowski, can I start with you, please?
Yes, 10.2.
10.2. and that's a non-pecuniary interest on. Did you
Oh, I
yeah,
think I
on the
understand.
basis that you
yeah,
have relatives that own a property in
that's,
Rockdale,
yeah, and
and
yeah,
we'll
it's,
leave the online room for that purpose. Thank you, Councillor Serenowski. Councillor Muscat.
I wish to declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item 10.4 on the basis of perception, as I am a member of the Botany RSL sub-branch, but I will remain in the chamber for consideration and voting on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Are there any other disclosures of interest? Okay, there are no other councillors that wish to disclose an interest. This will be noted in the minutes. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 6, which is the minutes of previous meetings. So we'll start with the minutes of the council meeting held on the 9th of February 2022. And I'd just like to, in being my first meeting that I chaired, I did pick up where in relation to 10.5 of the minutes on the 9th of February, in that notice of motion, I put the vote, the amendment which was carried. I should have then said that the amendment become the motion and put to the vote. So in light of this oversight, I put that the minutes be adopted subject to item 10.5 being recommitted because of this procedural irregularity, and revote that item. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Souness. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favour say aye. Against? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Are there any other... so I now ask that...
I've got a correction in 10.1 of that meeting of the 9th of February. It's just that it was the notice of motion about asking the minister to visit Bayside, and they left off the minister that we didn't know, Natalie Ward, the Minister of Metropolitan Roads, who was stated on radio, you can go a different way if you don't want to travel on the toll. And I believe Rob Stokes is involved in the transport part as well. So it was just to add those to them, to have a letter written to invite them out as well.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. We can make that amendment to those minutes. Thank you very much. Are there any other... so can I go back to the full minutes of... Oh, are there any other discussion in relation to those minutes? No? All right, I put that those minutes be accepted. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. All right, I now move to item 6.2. This was the minutes of the extraordinary meeting we held on the 23rd of February 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Nargi, seconded Councillor Souness. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? I declare the minutes confirmed. Tonight we have 2 Mayoral minutes, councillors, and so the first one is in relation to the response to the New South Wales flood crisis, and just want to acknowledge that it's been a very challenging time for many people across the state particularly, and we've always recognised recognise when these disasters occur and try to provide support where we can. So what we're suggesting is that council donates $5,000 on behalf of our community to Give It, which is as a financial donation to the New South Wales Flood Appeal, and that is a group where the money goes directly on the ground to people that are directly affected by the floods. and that council supports our own local residents. I know we had some flooding in some of our areas as well, that any of our residents whose property has been impacted by the recent floods, that we provide additional free pickups of water damaged items. And so there's a little bit more detail there in the Mayoral Minute, particularly that it, we also want to acknowledge the hard work of our first responders and volunteers who give their all, including risking their own lives to help others in times of emergency. And we thank them for their tireless work and for providing the support needed for those whose lives have been impacted. So I'm very proud of our community, and when we need to help, council responds and helps when other areas need it. So therefore, is there any discussion to the motion, the Mayoral Minute? No discussion? All right, there being no further discussion, I put the motion, which is on the screen. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to 7.2. So this is on our landmark contract for 100% renewable energy, which is really exciting, as you will recall from my earlier Mayoral Minute at the last meeting. We're really doing some excellent work at council and have a really clear pathway. And this is just another one of those, the steps that we're taking, entering into partnership with SS Rock and 25 other New South Wales councils for the supply of 100% renewable energy to all Bayside Council-owned sites and operated facilities. So although I acknowledge there is still more to be done to make our contribution towards reducing and offsetting our carbon emissions to provide for a sustainable environment for future generations to come, by being part of this contract, our council is taking a significant stride in doing our part to address the impacts of climate change. So through this contract, our council's working jointly hand in hand with our neighbouring councils to reduce our environmental footprint, and we will continue to do more to set specific actions and targets to continue to raise awareness and focus on reducing and offsetting our carbon emissions into the future. So there's some more information there for councillors and the public, which is in the business paper, which outlines the councils that are involved and the targets and goals associated with that. So another great example of councils working together, and certainly when we work in partnership to create those economies of scale, we can, not only does it provide commercial benefits, but also improved environmental outcomes. So I move that the Mayoral Minute be adopted, and that is on the screen there. Is there any discussion?
I just would like to congratulate the staff on this fantastic initiative, and I've been reading in the business papers as well that the council is looking into electric vehicles in the future, and I'm very excited about that prospect. Oh, sorry. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the hard work that you're doing.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Is there any further discussion? All right, then I put the motion, which is on the screen. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the motion carried. We now move to number 8, which is items by exception. So prior to the public forum, we have the opportunity to move some items by exception, and but we can discuss those. So I'm suggesting not the motions, because I know we're all passionate about talking to our motions, but in relation to the reports and committee meetings, is there any that, what we might do is go round the room, and any that people want to pull out, and speak to, we can, and then we move the rest by exception. So might just go round the room. Councillor Morrissey, is there any you would like to? Councillor Muscat, Councillor Fardell, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Naji, Councillor Tunis.
11.1, 11.2, or subset of items within there. Those responses to questions, there's no discussion on those. Is there confirmation?
Correct, yeah.
That's it, apart from the motion. That's it for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tunis. Councillor Werner?
Please, I'd like to make a comment on 11.3.
11.3?
Yes, the
Okay.
minutes of Planning and Environment Committee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Werner. Councillor Wada? Councillor Barlow? Okay. I can come back, Councillor Barlow, while you have a look. Councillor Hannah?
I'm fighting with one arm tied behind my back here.
That's no good.
I can't get my computer fired up, and even the computer guy's having trouble with it, so I'm not that dumb. Anyway, I've just made a scribbly note. I think it's item 11.3, in
Okay.
particular CPE 22.003.
Thank you, Councillor
Yeah,
Hannah. We'll pull
thank-
out all of 10
thank you.
all of 11.3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas?
Also 11.3.
Okay, perfect. And Councillor Cedric?
I just wanted to thank the staff for the feedback on,
So did you want to pull an item?
no, I just wanted to thank the staff. That's it, 10.3, just wanted to thank the staff. 10.2, sorry, thank the staff for that.
But not pull it?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cedric. Councillor Saranowski? I can
Uh,
see you waving.
10.10.
10.1?
Yeah, in relation to the Angela Nastas Aquatic Centre.
10.10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was 10.1, I think, and 10.3. I don't know if someone put that out.
No.
Okay. All right. I think that was. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so what we might do is I'll just read out the items that are going to remain. And so we have 10.1, which is the Community Strategic Plan, the draft for public exhibition. We have 10.3, which is the update on deployment of smart CCTV across Bayside LGA. We have 10.10, which is the response to the question of management and lease of Angelo Anestis Aquatic Centre. We have 11.1 minutes of the Traffic Committee on the 16th of February, 11.2 minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee on the 9th of March, and then we have 11.3, the minutes of the City Planning and Environment Committee meeting. And we also have the items where we have a public forum as well, which will remain, and motions will remain.
10.7, if we could.
10.7, Councillor Barlow, that is the organisational structure. Yep. Excellent. All right, so,
Madam Mayor,
yes,
can council deal with 10.2 separately, not in bulk? That way I want to abstain from voting.
sorry, can you say that again,
Oh,
please? Sorry.
If council can deal with 10.2 by itself and have it recorded that I didn't participate in the vote.
Oh, 10.2. It'll be pulled out though, so.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Oh, we'll have to pull it out because it's public forum anyway. Yeah, so that's fine.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, councillor
Yeah.
Saranowski. All right, we now move that the remaining items, other than those called out just now, be adopted. Those called out as well as the motions. So just to be clear that all the notices of motion 12.1 to 12.6 remain, and then the 3 items where we have public speakers, they will remain as well. And so do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved councillor Fardell, seconded councillor Jansen. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. All right, thank you, councillors. We will now move to the public forum. So members of the public who have applied to speak at the meeting will now be invited to address the meeting. We have 3 speakers tonight dealing with item 12.1, 12.2 and 12.3, and for the purposes they are in relation to motions, and I will, as each speaker comes, I will articulate which motion it refers to. Speakers are advised that a warning bell will sound when only 1 minute of speaking time remains. Speakers, so is everyone, do we have, I can see we've got Ms. Field here. Do we have other speakers online? Okay, so we have 1 speaker present and 2 speakers online with us via Teams. So speakers are reminded to keep communication factual, polite and professional, and use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks, and defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. So we move to item 12.1. This is a notice of motion which refers to the recognition of significant historical sites and events and the installation of historical plaques and interpretive signs, and this motion was submitted by Councillor Cedric. So we have 1 person has registered to address the meeting about this, and I invite Miss Anne Field, an interested citizen but also former councillor, to please come and speak to the item.
Sorry, just press that, right. Madam Mayor, councillors, and I'd like to acknowledge my former council colleagues, Councillor Barlow and Councillor Saranowski online, and staff, although I don't know any of the staff now, or many of them except for Meredith. So my departure from here was in 1999, which was a long time ago. All right, I'm here tonight to discuss, to talk about item 12.1. People, places and events have shaped our local area over a very long time and must be recognised. We could rely on archival photos or the many books written by a late local historian, Councillor Ron Rathbone, who passed away in 2009. But this simply is not good enough. We need visual representation of places and people so that our residents can better appreciate our significant past in its geographic context. I uncovered a wealth of information in my 23 years of research for my Moorfield Racecourse book. This information would have in fact been lost forever had I not told the story. My Moorfield Racecourse Facebook site and my Moorfield material on my website keep the story active. It's quite interesting. Probably not a day goes by without I have somebody across Australia or overseas viewing that material, and I'm highly honoured that they do that. But our local history is unique and very special to us, but it needs to be better acknowledged and valued within Bayside Council. And this notice of motion from Councillor Cedric will at least help to start this moving along. We can recognise historical buildings such as Lytham Halls and Elmo in Harrow Road, DePito in Wollongong Road, Tempe House, Wilson's Cottage, the list goes on. We can recognise homes that significant people lived in. Don Bradman lived in the Cush family home in Frederick Street in Rockdale when he was playing cricket for the St George Cricket Association. We have many significant public buildings, the Arncliffe Post Office, the Arncliffe Fire Station. We have the original building in Arncliffe Public School. We have Bexley Fire Station and, of course, the former Bexley Council Chambers, which have undergone readaptive use, along with Banbury Cottage in Chandler Street, Rockdale. And, of course, Primrose House at Dolls Point has certainly been restored to its wonderful grandeur and is now used as a school. We also need to include engineering sites, places of entertainment. The list is actually quite extensive. We have many residents who have made valuable contributions to our local area, and in doing so across so many areas. Having lived and worked with the Moore family for so long, they were very influential people, not only with racing, they also supported the Cottage Hospital, St George Cottage Hospital, which later became St George Hospital, St Patrick's Church, and no doubt the school. Perhaps the most famous person to live in Bexley, that probably has never been recognised, is Sir George Reed. He lived at number 2 Beaconsfield Street between 1893 and 1896. He was the Premier of New South Wales from 1894 to 1899 and the Prime Minister of Australia from 1904 to 1905. Very few people would probably know about George Reed. We could talk about Christina Steed, who lived in Needham Hall before the family moved to Watson's Bay. She attended St George Girls in its inaugural year in 1916. She became a world-famous author, was the recipient in 1974 of the inaugural Patrick White Award. And since 1979, there has been the Christina Steed Prize for Fiction. If we look at people with an industrial background, in 1904, George Fortescue moved to Arncliffe and opened a factory on the corner of Lobster Street and Hurst Street. It later became Federal Machinery and specialised in the manufacturing of agricultural machinery. Its brand, IXL, was recognised over Australia. We can move on to a well-known Arncliffe name, Edward Esdale, who was a skilled instrument maker who went into business in Hunter Street, Sydney, but lived in Rockdale. He moved to Rockdale in 1887 and settled in Gordon Street, now Farrar Street in Arncliffe. And in 1908, he purchased a significant property, the Towers, in Forest Road, Arncliffe. Well, we can move down to Third Ward and we can consider Thomas Saywell, a very astute businessman who certainly left his mark on Brighton Sands. The development he envisaged was a bathing enclosure, a hotel, and several streets of semi-detached cottages linked to the proposed Rockdale railway station by the steam-operated tramway and, of course, the Saywell terraces. Samuel Cook was another significant person. He was responsible for having Scarborough Park set aside in 1879. And of course, ultimately, he brought to bear much considerable influence on the government. And of course, the name Cook Park was granted in his honour. So I guess we could add many more people in our local area to recognise as part of this project of recognising important people. We could have Nancy Hillier from Botany, Sir Joseph Carruthers, I'm almost finished. Peter DePina, Bill O'Reilly, Albie Thomas, Bruce Sharp, a Bexley resident who was a gymnast in the Melbourne Olympics and a very astute artist. The residents in historical societies within Georges River Council, where they have this program operating, are invited to submit nominations to council. And usually what happens there is one in each ward is in fact considered. And they choose an appropriate time of year in which to present this particular ward. I think it's probably very significant that it happens in a week that stands alone, because we're very long overdue to raise the importance of important buildings, our heritage, and important people in our past. I commend you to the notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Field. I think you've certainly articulated some of our important history, so thank you, and I encourage everyone to look at Ms Field's website too, which has a lot of interesting information on there too about our history. As there are no more speakers on this item, we'll now deal with the item. There is a motion before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cedrak, seconded. Councillor Tsunis. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Cedrak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first thank the Speaker, Mrs Field, our previous councillor on Bayside or Rockdale, as well as Georges River, Cogra. I guess the reason why this came about, there was a lot of residents calling out for recognising our history in Bayside, especially along Ward 5. This is a real positive motion. I want to thank the GM, the staff, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Tunis and Savranovsky, as well as the residents. And some of the residents that brought this to my attention, some of the things they were saying were things like, we need plaques to tell the story about our suburbs, about our past. We need to recognise our memories, things like Ramsgate Baths, the trams, even the old zoo in Sans Souci, believe it or not. To recognise Bayside, we've got a rich history here, whether it be European or Aboriginal. There's so much that we have, and it's quite significant, and I think we need to recognise that. And so what this motion is aiming to do is to make this an annual event, okay? It's a real positive initiative, and the annual event is that council to create an annual program similar to what we've seen at Georges River, other councils. There would be a competition kind of situation. Policy would be created to look at our heritage, recognising our history and culture, and we would have an exterior body such as the Botany Historical Trust or the St George Historical Society to determine and assist council with coming up with 5 to 10 nominees per year. Now, speaking to Councillor Morrissey and previous Councillor Fields, looking at it, when we would do this. So there's, things like History Week, Heritage Month or Week. Again, it could be even on Australia Day. The idea of this is that it would happen yearly. It would be an annual event, 5 to 10 nominees, similar to other councils. Obviously, there would be a budget there, as well as there is also programs by the New South Wales government to assist in this. Overall, this is going to recognise what we do here. When we walk past these beautiful beachfront sites or even in Bexley, and we just don't know what's there. And I know Councillor Morrissey has been speaking about this over the past few times, these interpretive signs. So I implore the councillors to get behind this. This is a great thing that we could all be part of, and it's a great initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cedrak. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am familiar with these types of schemes in my experience and commend this scheme. When I initially read the notice of motion, it didn't come across strongly that people were involved, so I'd like that, I would suggest additional wording to that to nominate a significant historical site, person or event within your motion. Sure. Once the Speaker explained that, I realised that that was the intent of it. 100%. I have actually seen the Speaker's website. I looked at it when I was running for council, and it is an amazing website full of history, so thank you for speaking tonight. So once again, I support this scheme. We were contacted by a Ward 2 resident again today who has inquired about a particular plaque and signage on the corner of Brodie Sparks Drive and the highway out the front of Walleye Creek. I think that is a good one to begin with. That signage in regards to Tempe House is in a dilapidated condition, and it would be a good one to replace for that community there. So just wanted to put that out there also for Ward 2. that resident's name was Ross Berry, and he's been championing the replacement of that signage and the maintenance of that garden for some time now. It's in a prominent site, so I'd like that to be considered as part of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Are you happy with the amendment to add people? Thank you. And then are you happy if we just add that as one suggestion, and taking into note that there will be suggestions from other wards?
Problem with suggestions. I think it's great, especially my fellow councillor Jansen there. Just long as we have a process that it's a fair process and it's done annually in an appropriate way where there's a proper forum, I'm all for it.
Yeah. All right, so we can say that councillors put forward with community consultation some ideas for council's consideration. Councillor Saranowski, did you want to say something? Could you just unmute, please, Councillor Saranowski?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to firstly thank Anne Field.
Could
for
I,
her,
sorry, Councillor Saranowski, could you please go a little bit closer to the microphone? Yeah,
Yep, can you hear me? Yeah.
yeah, and
Firstly,
loud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank former Councillor Anne Field for her presentation and well researched. Thank you, Anne. I want to commend Councillor Cedric for putting up this notice of motion. Mr Mayor, in terms of the signs, can I make a suggestion? Whenever I go in the city, I'm amazed of the historical signs that are put up around the CBD, and I actually spend quite a bit of time walking around, and I find it really interesting to find out the history of the various buildings, and that's why I totally support this notice of motion. I'm not really concerned about the budget because it's important, Madam Mayor, that we can apply for funding to the state government. I guess we need to make these signs easily to be read and noticeable. And that's one thing that some of the residents that have contacted me over the years would like to see, the history of a particular site or a park. So if we could look at you know, the signage to be noticeable, easily read, and a bit of interesting comments on it, and maybe if we could just go in the city and have a look at some of the signs that have been put up around the CBD. But once again, I commend everyone that's behind this notice of motion, and thank you, Councillor Cedric, and thank you, former Councillor Anfield. I totally support this.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion, Councillor Saranowski. Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Souness?
I support this, and I think it's something that's a long time in coming. I'd like to thank former Councillor Anfield for coming and recent candidate, and I'd like to thank Paul for finally taking his training wheels off and jumping into the deep end of the pool. And people around the table know what I mean. But it's a great initiative. We have got a subtle version of this. So you go to Lytham Hall, you can see the signage there, fair enough, it's on the street. You go to Tempe House, you've got to go through the bushes to find it. So we have tried it, we have made an attempt. Down at Ramsgate, there's a big plaque down there telling the people what happened in the years gone by. But as the years go on, the people that know this information unfortunately pass away. We need to collate it, we need to grab it. I met a gentleman 2 weeks ago who came from Queensland, who was just coming down after all the COVID business. His father lived in Ramsgate in 1970, in 1936. In 1936, King George V, who was the monarch of this country, passed away. And there was a notice sent out by the council to all the sporting groups that there was 3 days of mourning and they could not play cricket for that weekend on the 20th of January. The Nippers program, all the swimming programs were cancelled. So that's a little bit of information that it's a live piece of information that came to me. He gave me an extract of the letter, but without that being sort of transmitted, no one knows about it. That's our history. So it's a good thing. I think if we do place a monetary amount to the side to develop this, it's a great thing, but I think we should develop it a bit further and look at doing walking trails. I think Councillor Savranowski talked about the signage they have down in the city of Sydney, and especially around Chippendale, all those areas. There's actually interpretive markers where you see, okay, this is what building was here. You walk down the street, it directs you to go to somewhere else. You could walk for hours and just follow the history of the place as it evolved over the years. So I think it's something we can consider as well, apart from just individual building signage. There's probably an issue with putting a sign up in front of the house and say Don Bradman lived here. It might be a problem to the resident, but I'm sure we can get over that. But there's a lot of other people that have lived in our area and have made a substantial contribution to arts, to loads of fields. So I commend the motion, and I hope we get a lot of traction in the next 12 months with it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Stunis. And we've got around Daceyville, we've got plaques of different people that went to war and fought for us, and you can read their story, and a lot of the streets are named after them. And it's just a really nice thing to be able to, particularly for younger people, to connect to our history.
And I'd just like to support the motion. I'm so glad we seem to have some people that want us to protect our heritage. In 1995, when I was elected, there was 5 of us out of 15. They threw out everything, everything that was done over the years of the heritage list. And there was the 3 Ward 4 councillors. There was Ron Rathbone, Steve Holrod and myself, former councillor Anne Field, and I think Yvonne Bellamy, and that was all. And the rest just threw everything out. So we started again. So I'm really pleased about it. And the blue plaques I did find out about was too late to try and get some entries in, but that came from the Honourable Mark Buttigieg, so I'm sure he'll notify us next time. So I'm glad it's here, and finally we might have something. And Ramsgate Barbs was Pemberton Barbs with a zoo in it, and I actually swam there. Caught the black and white bus down to swim in the Pemberton Barbs.
Excellent. All right.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Oh, yes, Councillor Hannah.
Can't let this pass without making a few comments, and thank you to former Councillor Anne Field for a very informative presentation. I could listen to that for hours. Very, very interesting, rich history in this area, going back a long, long while. And I commend to you her book on Moorfield Racecourse, which happens to have one of my relatives mentioned in it. So there you go. But look, congratulations to Councillor Sedrak for this. Gee, a lot's happened in 6 years. I've been gone for 6 years, and we seem to have had an epiphany. It's really, really quite incredible. We're talking about history, and we're talking about heritage. So, yeah, I think this is good. Congratulations.
So you've come back at the right time then, Councillor Hannah. Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, I also commend the motion, but I agree with Councillor Stunos that I think Council should look into taking it a step further. My concerns are with the self-nomination process, that we're losing people, we're losing our elderly residents, and 5 to 10 nominations per year is probably just not enough to retain that history that's so rich across such a big area. Also, some of our suburbs are much younger and don't have those elderly residents in order to put those nominations forward. So we've seen that in the demographics of the community strategic plan we've reviewed. So my suggestion is if we could have an amendment to this, Councillor Sedrak, for the appropriate committee to review the idea of a heritage trail in Bayside.
Can I just quickly, I don't mind that. I think that's a great idea. There are other councillors that are this, for example, on our beachfront, having a trail. It could be like even a tourist attraction where you get a map from council and it says Koima, this is what happened, Brighton, this is what happened. So I'm happy for the committee to instigate all this kind of stuff. Look, in regards to the numbers, Councillor Field was mentioning that Georges River did only have 3. There is a cost associated with this. If the committee find that, and speaking to the GM, 5 to 10 is probably the appropriate amount. However, if the committee, and there's a lot of nominations coming from councillors, coming from people, events as well, and if they want to put more, it's fine. It's not a finite definition, and adding that is also, it's not a problem either.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to add, in regards to the historical part of it, that for educational purposes, each of the stages have a historical unit and they have to look at the community. So having this information and documentation would enhance that educational learning in our area. So we've only got the old Botany Bay books. There's the green and the blue and the brown, Reddy Brown book, but we have nothing else that the children can go to. So I commend this motion and I'd like to see it go further for educational purposes.
So then, if it's okay with you, maybe on that, sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor, maybe that last one, that the appropriate committee review heritage trail and educational resources, experiences for primary, our local schools, high school, primary.
Yep, so we'll just, add that motion will then have to come back to a committee anyway, for further information. So, all right, so if there's no other speakers, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Is it amendment or is it, I'd suggest that Councillor Douglas moves, if the movers accepts it, to move her amendment into the motion.
So we'll just
'Cause
make it
it's
number
separate,
6.
yeah.
We'll just add a number 6 that it goes to the relevant committee. So we'll wait for that to pop up on the screen.
Actually, excuse me, Madam Mayor, I'd probably just prefer that that's kept separate, if that's okay. If we could just vote on it separately, thanks. So we're just
Hang
voting on the
just-
amendment first?
Just a moment, thank you. Thank you. So the process would be that you've asked for an amendment and the mover has accepted the amendment. So therefore it becomes part of the motion.
Okay.
So now that is on the screen, that the appropriate committee review the whole. It's actually review everything that's in the motion. So a report be provided in relation to this motion, which includes everything. So to the appropriate committee. And that way, then there's an opportunity in the committee meeting to unpack all the moving parts of to include in this moving forward. All right. So therefore, we can now see that that the appropriate committee review heritage. So what we might actually do, if you're okay, Councillor Jansen, we may just leave out number 6 and we'll raise that at the committee. People can put forward suggestions if that's okay with you, Councillor Jansen. Yeah, okay, so we'll also, so we'll remove number 6, please. Yep, excellent. And that and just leave number 7, that the appropriate committee review, that a report come to the next appropriate committee meeting. And then if we can move to when you're finished. And then we'll just add people to the top. So we've covered places, people and events.
Places, events, and people. That's actually a history, that's the name of a history book.
So you can remove everything after committee, because that can all be discussed at committee, the rest of it. Plaques, people and interpretive signs. Oh yes, sites, people.
Not places, Michael.
Yeah, just people. Excellent. And if we could just go back to seven and just remove everything after committee. And that becomes number 6. All right. Thank you. So that will come back to a committee report will come back where further discussion where those things can be contributed. All right, no further discussion. I put the motion on the screen. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare it carried. All right, we now move to item 12.2. This is the notice of motion to reduce the number of people smoking along the Brighton Sands foreshore. We've got one person that's registered to speak, and I now invite Mr. Shabel El Haj, who is an interested resident, to invite him onto Teams. So, Mr. El Haj, are you on Teams?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome to our meeting and thank you for speaking to this item. Can you please confirm whether you are speaking for or against the motion?
Speaking for the motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. El Haj. If you would like to, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, so it's item 12.2, motion, reduce the number of people smoking shisha at a Gilead on Brighton foreshore. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council and fellow community members of Bayside Council. My name is Shabel El Haj and I live in Monterey with my wife and 3 young children. We spend a lot of time at Brighton Beach as a family, and more often as my children have grown, they have complained to me about secondhand smoke when they are down there. According to Health New South Wales, there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. We recognise that smoking cigarettes is prohibited in certain areas in New South Wales under the Smokers Free Environment Act 2000. Also, recognising that many local councils in New South Wales have now banned smoking on their beaches entirely. For everyone's understanding, the majority of the secondhand smoke at our local beaches is coming from a tobacco pipe known as the shisha. Also, different to cigarettes, this must be recognised as still smoking tobacco, which produces significant secondhand smoke. I propose that our community ban the smoking of all tobacco-related products that produce secondhand smoke from our beaches in our community for the sake of our young children who should be left innocent of this harmful substance in their lungs. And tonight I speak in favour on this motion and thank Councillor Cedric for pushing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. El Haj, for addressing us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more speakers on this item, so we'll now deal with the item. There is a motion before us. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Cedric, seconded Councillor Tsounis. I have a mover and a seconder. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I also thank Mr. El Haj for his comments? This is, other than some of the hooning and antisocial behaviour in Brighton and rubbish, this is probably the next big issue, is smoking on the beach. And this is not, and I want to thank also some of the other councillors involved and the GM as well as the directors, Councillor Tunis and Hannah, for bringing this to my attention at our last meeting about smoking. Since then and prior to this, people have constantly brought this to my attention, that smoking is an issue on Brighton Beach. And I don't want this to be seen as this is attacking any one cultural group. This is really what it's about, and I'm happy to look at amending it if necessary. The aim here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have a smoking issue at Brighton Beach. families find it hard to walk down the beach without seeing some kind of smoke. And so, without going full steam ahead, what I'm asking for here is, at the moment we've got these smoke-free zone signs at Brighton, and I've taken a few photos of them and people have sent them to me. We might need a few more. We might need to look at other things. So what we're asking here, guys, councillors, is that we're asking for the committee, this be taken to a committee meeting, the City Services Committee, to be unpacked, to look at all the options, whether it be ranges on the weekends. I know that's a complicated process. Whether it be paid police on weekends, I know there's an additional cost to that. Whether it be the additional signage. The point is, though, that I would love to see the professionals, our directors, our staff, put something together to look at how we could best attack this situation. And at the moment, what we've got is, and I'm not talking about also smoking. I don't have a problem with smoking. If someone wants to smoke indoors in a facilitated area, that's fine. If they want to smoke at home, that's fine. We are talking about the Brighton smoke-free zone. Only in that Brighton smoke-free zone. I'm not talking about anywhere else. That's not my concern in this motion. So it's not that I'm against smoking. I'm against smoking in this smoking-free zone. So this is what this motion's all about. It's asking the staff to bring back to us through the committee that they could give us some options of how we could deal with this. And I'm open to suggestions. I'm here to say this is an issue. It needs to be brought out and we need to attack it.
Thank you, Councillor Cedric. Would you be open to removing point 2, subject to it first going to a report going to committee?
Yeah.
Especially take off member for health. I don't know what the member for health is.
Yeah, Councillor Cedric's agreed to the removal of number 2. Thank you, Councillor Cedric. Councillor Souness.
Yes, so last year, the previous council brought up a motion to ban smoking from public areas pretty much along the foreshore. I'd love to extend that and ban smoking where kids frequent. It exists around playgrounds, but only a certain distance from the playground. Within parks themselves, again, very diabolical to administer and control people, because we have a lot of parks. There's a lot of people that smoke in the parks and the kids are playing right next to them. We have this issue, you're walking along somewhere, someone's vaping in front of you, and you're in a plume of smoke. If I want to do that, I'll get on a steam train and chew the smoke that way. So, and there are people that do respect other people's space, so to speak, and do smoke in their homes, smoke away from other people, but there's a number that don't. So that's what this motion's about. There's a whole group of people, and we've seen photos and requests and speaking to a lot of people that this exists along the foreshore, not just Brighton, it exists elsewhere, from one end of the foreshore to the other. If we need to pinpoint an area, we might as well pinpoint the foreshore. There was a motion prior to the last motion that we had that we designated a zone along the boardwalk at Brighton to say no to smoking, and we've extended that beyond to wherever we have a smoking enclosure for those people that weren't here in the last term. So Coima, Brighton, Ramsgate, Monterey's Baths, Sandringham Baths all have that restriction. The signage finally is starting to go up. I've seen it going up, which is good. So whether people pay attention to that, I don't know, but we try our best. We can only try. It's like rubbish. People don't want to know about it. They'd rather throw it on the ground than actually put it in the bin. So it's an education process, and it's also a possible enforcement process, which this motion talks about. And I would imagine as we take it into a committee, we'll be talking about other ways of managing these issues. One thing that did come up in the conversation that we had around this is, okay, so people want to have shisha. Maybe we can explore if it's permissible within certain establishments under controlled and a controlled environment. You go to the RSL, there's people gambling, they're smoking. You can choose to go in there or you choose not to go in there. So it's managed and controlled. So maybe that can be another point. We can explore that as we go into committee. And I know that we have a ban on our outdoor dining areas, which directly impacts individuals. People walk past, people sit next to outdoor dining. They don't want to be harangued by other people's second-hand smoke. But I believe we have some establishments where we are the landlord and they're requesting that shisha be allowed or smoking be allowed within that establishment. Maybe we can look at that moving forward and creating a policy around that where that only the participants, only the people that want to go and participate in that activity, participate in that activity, and it doesn't have second-hand outcomes to other people. So that's an opportunity for that committee to explore. I don't know if we need to write anything down on that, but I'd like that to be explored and get that off the table. If it is an issue that we can remedy for certain business people, let's remedy it. But in terms of outdoor dining, no, I can't agree in reviewing that or looking at it differently. And it's better for us to have it outlawed in inverted commas rather than waiting for, through our mechanism of our leasing arrangements, rather than waiting for someone from the Department of Health to turn up and tap people on the shoulders. So I commend the motion. There's a bit of work to be done. And again, I think Councillor Cedric and myself, we're not picking on the people that like this activity. It's just the activities in the appropriate place. Okay? Like carhooning. If you want a carhoon, go to Eastern Creek, go to wherever there's racetracks, do whatever you have to do. Get it out of your system. Similar to this. If you want to do your smoking, do it in the comfort of your own home. Go to the places like the RSLs or whatever clubs have this opportunity. Go and do it. But keep it far separate from the general public and even further away from kids who can't say no. All right?
Thank you,
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Souders.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got
Madam
Councillor Hannah, and then Councillor Saranowski, then Councillor Werner, then Councillor Jansen. He's doing these ones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about this, and I've been mentioned in dispatches. I feel like I've been a little bit verbal. What I would like to say is that I think the wording of this could be nuanced, because I feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think that we should be just talking about measures to try and reduce the number of people smoking. I do use Ramsgate Beach a fair bit, and I am subjected quite often to second-hand smoke from various sources. So I don't think we should be talking about smoking that just comes from one particular type of device. I think we should be targeting trying to get better control in our non-smoking areas for all forms of smoking. I don't know whether or not the mover of this motion might be prepared to amend this to just delete the words shisha and in the actual motion to delete those words and just say smoking, because that's all encompassing. With cigarettes in particular, there is a very, very significant litter problem also. And I know someone that swims regularly down at Ramsgate who regularly spends half an hour to an hour picking up cigarette butts. So that's a byproduct of this as well. So I'm just thinking that we shouldn't be narrowing this. We should be encompassing all forms of smoking. So I don't know if the mover would be prepared to eliminate those references. I still believe it's going to have exactly the same effect, except we're going to be able to use it to perhaps try and better manage the people that ignore the no smoking zone, whether they be smoking cigarettes, roll your own, tally-ho, cigars, shisha, vaping, you name it. I think we should be covering the whole gambit.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Just one moment. No, just one moment. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Councillor Cedric, Councillor Hannah, would you be willing to accept that amendment?
I will do that for the common good. Common good.
Can I also add, if we can, maybe we can change Brighton foreshore to Cook Park foreshore. That captures the entire length of all the areas where we're signposting at the moment.
So thank you, Councillor Tsunis. You have another suggestion there. What are your thoughts? So we make an amendment along Cook Park, okay, and we remove the word shisha. Okay, so we then have a...
Madam Mayor, the title as well.
Yes, in the title, thank you. And so we'll leave it as general. All right, so at the moment that we've got that those amendments that have been accepted by the mover, is there any further discussion? No further... Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor?
Oh, sorry, I did promise Councillor Saranowski.
Yes.
Thank you. I thought people might have backed off, but Councillor Saranowski,
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I wanted
can
to
you
read
come a
something.
bit closer, Councillor Saranowski? Sorry. Shh.
That's all right. Yeah, Madam Mayor, I rise to support the notice of motion, and Councillor Hannah took most of the things that I was going to say that in relation to this, but the walking around our city, particularly the old Rockdale, the two biggest issues that confront me by residents, one is the hoons, two is the smoking, and that's something that is a big issue in terms of a health issue. I don't smoke at all, but by just go walking on the beach, there's a lot of things that are happening in terms of, I have no issues about people that want to smoke, that's their decision. But the biggest issue, Madam Mayor, is after they finish their smoking, they don't take their rubbish away with them, they leave it. We've got special bins for them, particularly for the barbecues. But I think we should go on the front foot, and I'm delighted to see that there's an amendment that from Koima down to Captain Cook Bridge, we should be banning all forms of smoking. You know, when you've got families to go on the beach or in the park, the last thing you want is your kids to be inhaling secondhand smoke. So I commend the notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. And in that report that comes to committee, we'll certainly, for new councillors, articulate in there where the bans currently exist to Councillor Barlow.
I was not going to support the original motion because I found it racist. I found it insulting. I hate smoking. I'm glad that it's now changed to just smoking. I had my husband die of smoking-related disease. He was eaten from the inside out. My mother choked to death because she had emphysema. So I do not like smoking, but I did not like the way that notice of motion was written. It was targeted, as far as I'm concerned, and I think anyone that read it could have been offended. You said, no, it's not a cultural thing, but it is. Smoking is smoking. Cigarettes, whatever you want, vaping, whatever the new thing is the kids do. And you don't smoke outside your shops because it's managed by the health department, so it's a different thing. And when I had my business, I used to just say, go away, move. I had a table around the corner, but that regulation came in. It's brilliant for the shopkeepers, but they're forever fighting the smokers because they just want to smoke. So I will support the motion now that the wording has changed. Otherwise, there was no way I was supporting the wording as it was.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Naji?
Yeah, look, for the record, Madam Mayor, I've never smoked in my life. I am an anti-smoker, and I always recommend and use the motto that kiss a non-smoker and enjoy the difference. There's no doubt. But I have to, first of all, thank Councillor Hannah and thank Councillor Barlow for their input. And there is no way that I can be convinced otherwise that it was targeted, because as Councillor Hannah said, smoking, there's all types of smoking, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's cigars, whether it's the shisha, and whether a bong, or any types of smoking. Even cars, brings out some exhaust smoking from the vehicles, but we're not going to go there. But yes, this is a different motion now, but I can assure you, I think it was, I mean, think about it, councillors. Who goes to Brighton Beach and has the shisha? Who does? And that is targeting a group, targeting a culture. I'm not going to get into religion because that's a bit too far, because all types of people smoke shisha from that culture, whether you're Muslim, you're Christian or whatever. But just having the shisha and disregard for other smoking, this is a disgrace. And I'm glad Councillor Hannah picked on it first, because I was just waiting for my turn. And Councillor Barlow is right. Now this, what we have in front of us, is a change. We're talking about smoking. Now, if we want to be serious about this, it doesn't matter what organisation in this world, whether it's an airport, whether it's a hospital, whether it's this council facility, they all dedicate a space where people go and smoke. You can't stop shisha. It's cultural. It's everywhere. It's in every council, but every council has a designated area. And if it's a restaurant, they designate an area the way so it can comply. It's up to it's their wish about smoking. It's up to the individual if they want to smoke or not. But yeah, sure, we are, as councillors, should provide a safe, non-smoking areas. But just don't target the shisha, a culture. And that's what I've seen, and thank you, Councillor Hannah, again.
Thank you, Councillor Naji. All right, so no further discussion. Do you want a right of reply, Councillor Sedrak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I too will thank Councillor Hannah for his addition. I think it's a good addition. And it's great to see Councillor Barlow agree on one of these motions twice in a row. I think she's loving this moment so much.
Thank you, Councillor Sedrak.
Thank you. So I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you.
Can I just point out, I think people are starting to look at this in a personal way, and
thank you.
And this is not supposed to be personal in any way. My family and friends are part of this culture. My culture and history pretty much invented shisha. So when we say this is targeting a certain ethnic group, that is not the intention. I understand it might be because some certain ethnic groups smoke this. However, that is not the intention. But I'm here and I've changed this motion for the sake of the floor, for the sake of the other, even people that have come to my attention and said, you know, Councillor, it's maybe better. However, the issue that we have down there, let's not beat around the bush. We've got to really take this on what it is. When people call up and send me emails, they send it about not cigarettes or vapes. They send it about shisha. And I'll say it again, I'm not against shisha. Definitely not. I've got a few myself. So this is not a cultural thing, and I think that what people want to do right now is turn it into cultural, targeting certain ethnic groups or religions. It's far from that. But if I'm going to stand here and be honest with myself. Come down to Ward 5, any weekend, and you tell me if this is not one key issue. Shisha. It's not a cigarette. We're not talking about cigarettes. But for the sake of other councillors, for the sake of the residents, so we could investigate this further and push it forward, I'm happy to remove that word if that's what everyone's going to be sensitive about, because the main aim here is to reduce it at the beach. At the end of the day, it will still take place. When a ranger goes to, 20 teenage boys saying, put that out, good luck. So we need to come up with strategies to stop this. We're not trying to make this a political issue or about ethnic groups. I come from this ethnic group. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sedrak. All right, we have an amended motion that the amendments have been accepted by the original mover. So that is now in front of you on the screen. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
I declare it carried. We now move to item 12.3, which is a notice of motion climate change mitigation and adaptation plan submitted by Councillor Werner. So we have one person. We just need to check. We did have a registered speaker, Mr. Stephen Bell. Has Mr. Stephen Bell, is he online or here? No, he doesn't appear to be online. Have we tried to contact him via Teams, or did he say he was attending in person? Okay, so we note that he was attending in person but is currently not at this meeting. Therefore, we will not. We will put this motion back into its normal order, so we will not consider this motion at this point in time. All right, councillors, that brings us to our reports, our remaining reports. So the first report that remains is the 10.1, which is the Community Strategic Plan, so the draft for public exhibition. There is an officer's recommendation before us, which is on the screen there, that it go on public exhibition for 28 days. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Barlow, seconded Councillor Souness. Is there, Councillor Barlow, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, the only reason I brought it up was the fact that it would have been hidden. It is going on public exhibition. I've already had a resident write to me to change something. I said, no, please put it in when it goes on public exhibition. So that's the only reason I've brought it forward, because I feel that anyone that's watching it or listens to it later realise that we've got something and it's worth reading, and hopefully we get quite a few submissions.
Yeah, good point,
and
Councillor.
And congratulate the staff on the document as well.
Good point, Councillor Barlow, and we'll certainly continue to we'll promote it on social media and in our newsletter next week as well, to encourage people to participate.
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Souness.
Actually, I was quite pleased in the process that was undertaken. At first I thought it's a little bit of, I don't know, mirrors and smoke and things like that, but honestly, watching the process develop over the past few weeks, I'm pleased with it. It's fantastic. I just hope we have the community that actually jumps on the back of this and actually gives us feedback, which we can modify our plan as we move forward. It was a great exercise, I think. So well done to the staff and well done to the management team at the top.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. All right, there no further discussion. So the motion on the screen that it goes for public exhibition. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare the motion carried. All right, we now move to item 10.3. No, we dealt with 2 in the... We didn't deal with 10.2? Oh, I need a division in 10.2, so we do need to put that forward. So, 10.2, this is the amendment to Rockdale Development Control Plan. So, just noting that there was an interest, Councillor Saranowski has indicated an interest, and Councillor Saranowski, can you please leave the Teams? He has... Councillor Saranowski, can you please leave the meeting?
Oh,
And come back. Councillor Saranowski, oh, still there. Okay, Councillor Saranowski has left the Teams meeting. He is not on the screen. Therefore, I now put 10.2. This is the amendment to Rockdale Development Control Plan 2011. The land subject to proposed Amendment 1 to Bayside Local Environmental Plan. And there is an officer recommendation before us. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Souness. Are there any speakers to this item? So there are no speakers to this item. Then I put the motion on the screen. All those in favour say aye. Aye. I have to call a division. And so if you are in support of the motion, can you please put your hand up and I will go around the room. So all those in support of the motion, put your hand up. Councillors, are you, when you're ready, and I'll call them out. Thank you. All right. Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Muscat, Councillor Fardell, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Naji, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Awada, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, and Councillor Cedric. And, sorry? And thank you. And I'm for the motion as well. And so that, therefore, we have everyone in favour, everyone present at the meeting in favour of the motion, and therefore I declare the motion carried. We would now like to invite Councillor Saranowski back on screen, please. Councillors, can I suggest everyone stand up and has a stretch while we're waiting?
That's a good idea. Get the blood flowing again.
All right. Left ear to left shoulder.
Come on, Scott. Get in the floor.
Touch toes.
We're zooming in right now.
So for people listening at home, we're just taking a moment for health benefits just to stretch and move. And Councillor Saranowski is back, so please, I encourage you to take your seats again and we will recommence. All right, we now move to 10.3. This is the update on deployment of smart CCTV across Bayside LGA, and we have an officer recommendation before us, and I have a mover, Councillor Cedric, second Councillor Souness. Councillor Cedric, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief. Can I, with these cameras and CCTV smart cameras, I want to thank the staff for preparing this report and update, in particular the GM and you, Madam Mayor, for your involvement in this process. I think this report is a first step in showing some of the positive things that we're doing. There is no doubt, especially in Ward 5, where hooning and antisocial behaviour is an issue. And by no means is this solving the problem, but it's a step in the right direction. And this report is only targeting some of those points. So I want to thank the people that were involved in that. Secondly, a lot of the residents who came out, I want to thank them who came out and met Councillor Douglas, myself, Councillor Souness, Councillor McDougall, and you, Madam Mayor, at our mobile office at Ramsgate. The feedback was, one of the first questions I asked, to get the ball rolling, do you know about these cameras? What's going on? How do you feel? Quite a positive response. People that live in the southern parts of Ward 5 there's quite a positive response, and that's where we were in Ramsgate. There's quite a positive response in how this has reduced that antisocial behaviour and hooning. So I want to thank them for coming out, all those people. It's great to get their positive feedback, as well as seeing this report. However, I know for a fact that this is only the start, and I know these cameras in their whole gamut is only reaching its, I guess, not even reaching its full potential. I know there's a long road to go. There's still a lot of issues down there, and all you got to do is just open your eyes or go down and open your ears, and you'll see, especially on weekends, anyone that lives in that Bay Street region or even down the southern ends, it's still an issue. So we're not saying this is solving the problem, and I'm not saying that in any way. We're going a step in the right direction by having this, as well as through your Mayoral Minute at our, I think, original meeting or second meeting, Madam Mayor, that one about instigating that action group with the member of Rockdale, Steve Camper. I think this is all going to go hand in hand, and I would love to see how far this can go. I would love to see, instead of the fines being, let's say, you know, hundreds of thousands, I could see that this would go up and up and up once we were in full swing. So I want to thank everybody once again, and I'm looking forward to how much this can grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cedric, and it's certainly, I encourage residents to read the report. There's some really interesting data in there, and I think we're going to really start to see some changes there. Also, just in relation to your point, so now that we've endorsed the minutes from last meeting, and I have had conversations with Mr. Steve Camper, the member for Rockdale, so that working group will, the process for that will be made available shortly as well. So there's been some planning that's been taken place there between council and Mr. Camper's office, so that will be good to see that start up. Councillor Souness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a great initiative. A lot of people love it. Some people hate it. The people that hate are the people who are scared to be caught on it. So, in the long run, though, I think what's going to happen from talking around the trap, so to speak, the people that do the wrong thing will either improve their behaviour tremendously because they know there's a camera over their shoulder, or they'll move away. And that's what happened in the past when the police started chasing the hoons up around our neck of the woods, so to speak. They just moved away. They moved south. They moved back over the other side towards inner west. The people that do the wrong things in terms of motor vehicle activity, hooning, speeding, all that sort of stuff, don't want to be seen, don't want to be caught, obviously, but they have mechanisms. They have phones, they have communications, they move. The growing problem, though, in our area, and our cameras won't catch them, hopefully through other forms of recognition in terms of identifying faces and clothing and so on, are the people on these motorbikes that I noticed the other day that 4 hoon past my house, no number plates on the back of those trail bikes. They just go, they do their thing. Apparently it's a new trend now. They knock on the window of the police car, give them the bird, and then take off, and the police can't chase them because they can't. They've been told not to chase them because it'll create a critical incident. If you chase someone over a certain distance, it becomes a problem because they might hurt themselves, fall off the bike, whatever. Then the police have to deal with it in a different way. So I hope these cameras can capture them. Obviously, people have got helmets, people have got clothing, the bikes can be identified. Slowly, we'll create a montage of these people and we'll hone in on them. And the police can do what they have to do. Obviously, we as a group can only provide the information as the council, but we can at least give that to the police who are under-resourced, and hopefully they can put together a picture and hone in on these people that are constantly doing the wrong thing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. Any other speakers? Councillor...
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to congratulate. This is a really detailed report, and I hope everyone does read it. And we have to congratulate the former councillor, James McDonald, that was the one that actually found, and the general manager that discovered the technology and got it installed. And reading the report, it's fascinating to see the details. But the mobile LPR, you may as well throw out the parking meters because this is better. And I mean it's it's everywhere. So that's what the best thing is. Once they do the data for each shopping centre or whatever, it then creates that people will start moving on, like they did in my shopping centre apparently. But so I just hope that everyone. It's a very detailed report, and it needs to be read by everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you for this report, Council, and I wanted to add that I went to a community meeting with the St George Police this week, and the new area commander, Jason Box, did portray that it's very important for the community to report these incidents as well. Apparently they have had some issues where shop owners in Bay Street haven't come forward with the details when, that horrific hooning incident with the smoke coming out the back of Bay Street, which unfortunately wasn't captured on these cameras at the time. There were apparently a lot of shop owners and whatnot around filming it, but they didn't come forward. I'm sure they feel intimidated, but they can come forward later. So the area commander did urge that as councillors we can share that information. We can share to our constituents that if they have dash cam or CCTV or photos, to call up Kogarah Police Station and the police will come to them and collect a copy of it. That's the best way for the community to report on these issues, not to upload it to the community portal, which is what I usually do when I have records of these issues, but to directly contact the Kogarah Police Station and provide that material to them for their investigations, which is complementary to these licence plate recognition cameras. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. All right, thank you. Do you right of reply? Thank you. All right, we've got the motion on the screen in front of us that we receive and note the report, and we look forward to future reports to committee meetings so we can sort of see the success, and as we continue to get grants and roll out more LPR cameras. And I know that there's some particular sites that have already, we know are already hot spots through council working with police. All right, so there I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare it carried. This now takes us, we have moved item 10.456. This takes us to item 10.7. This is the review of the organisational structure. There's an officer's recommendation before us. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Jansen, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Are there any speakers?
I wasn't sure. I mean, I've read it and I've been through a lot of organisation structures. It always confuses everyone. I didn't know whether the councils at some stage wanted a briefing on it to explain some of the way it's been done. That was all. I don't know if it's beneficial or not. When I asked the General Manager.
I think, Councillor Barlow, I think that, who would you like to?
Through the Mayor, we have compiled a short report that went to the Staff Consultative Committee as part of the consultation. It's quite high level, but it does explain in a bit more detail what functions will sit within the various 4 departments. I'm happy to bring that to a committee meeting if councillors are interested to see that.
I'd then move it goes to a GM briefing or a committee meeting, whatever, if that's...
Do we have time constraints?
So, Councillor Barlow, just so that I understand, that would be additional to the officer recommendation? Yes. Yeah, that's fine, then we're not constrained.
I'll second that.
It's for information.
So then it's just an additional item that just says for information for interested councillors. Are you happy to accept that?
There's an information session at the end of the month that proposes to be included in that information session. Why don't we just do that so it's specific?
Which is next week.
It's just a briefing. So if we just do it then, it's done. And, so let's just do
All right, so that's been accepted by the mover. No further discussion. I put it. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Okay, that takes us to item 10.10, which is a response to question in relation to the management and lease of the Angelo Anastas Aquatic Centre. One moment, sorry.
Sorry.
I'll just find my my note. Okay, so that is just a response. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Hannah?
No, just more or less a technical question. I thought these responses just simply got tabled. I don't think, I think you'll find that there's no necessity to have these moved, seconded and
Correct.
yeah,
Yes,
and in fact there's no debate on these.
I
So,
think though that
unless
Councillor
things have changed.
Saranowski wanted to pull it
Oh.
out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah, but I think you'll find under the Local Government Act you're actually not permitted to debate these. So I
Correct.
think
Yes.
you've actually just got to let the response stand.
Mm.
I don't think I
I
think
think-
you'll find the Act does not permit you to debate these.
Yes, the
unless it's changed.
the response stands, but
Yeah.
a councillor can make a comment in
Okay.
relation to
All right.
that, can they, or not? Not technically, okay. I reverse
Thank you,
that.
thank you,
Councillor
thank you,
Hannah.
Councillor Hannah. Thank you.
Councillor Saranowski, unfortunately, the Act prevents us speaking to the item. You're just on mute, Councillor Saranowski. You're still on mute, I'm afraid. Councillor Saranowski, you're on mute. I don't think he can hear us. All right.
We could find out what Councillor
Yeah, so what we might do is there'll have to be a report that will have to come to committee soon anyway, because we know that the lease is nearing. So sorry, Councillor Saranowski, we couldn't hear you, so we'll bring it to a committee and then we can speak to it at a committee. No, you're still on mute, I'm afraid. Sorry. Sorry. We can't hear you, Councillor
Did you-
Saranowski.
Oh, did you get, it's just a question. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, no, I wasn't going to debate it. I just wanted to know, but you've already answered it, just a time frame of where council will consider those three options. That's all I was going to ask.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. So,
Yeah.
We could, through the chair, we could take that as a question on notice. I think
Yeah.
the answer which I can give now is that you will be considering those options towards the end of this year or early next year. The time frame is mid-2023 by which the decision has to be made.
okay, thank you. All right, so we'll have a report to the committee at the appropriate timeline. All right, so we'll move to number 11, which is the minutes. The minutes of the committee. So there was a request, I think, thank you, councillors. There's a request to withdraw 11.1, the minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee meeting on 16th of February 2022. Was there a particular item?
22.010.
Okay, so just give me a moment. 20 what was it? 010? All right, so the item being referred to is the Bayview Street and Regional Street Bexley review and proposed replacement of rubber speed cushions with Watts profile speed humps at roundabout. The committee recommendation was that approval be given for the replacement of 3 rubber speed cushions with 3 Watts profile speed humps at the roundabout of Bayview Street and Reginald Street as per the attached drawings. Councillor
So,
Souness?
I've had conversations with the immediate neighbours on the corner of, if you want to call it the four corners of that roundabout, 51 Bayview, 47 Bayview, 26 Bayview, 24 Bayview. The street's not aligned that well, but that's what they are. They believe that it'll impact them adversely. It's already making a lot of noise, vehicles coming through there, especially trades vehicles with toolboxes jumping up and down because they don't like going around the roundabout, they go right through it. So is it possible to, I'd like to move a change to this and move the item to an on-site meeting with the immediate neighbours and interested councillors, just to go over the finer details of this, because roundabouts and speed humps have impacted a lot of people in the past, and we don't need to put the community through unnecessary, what's the word, Mark? Angst. That's a good word. I like that one. The word of the week. Unnecessary angst.
Okay.
So if we've had a conversation on site, we could run the conversation of the need for it. This is a bit of a rat run. People avoiding M5 using this part of the world versus yay or nay, so to speak. At least they can input more directly. I know there's been letterbox drops and things around the area, but this is an old roundabout. We're just modifying it. The opportunity now for them to have their say is in front of us. So delaying it for a few weeks, I can't see it being a big issue.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Barlow. So if we looking at item 010, that we add a additional recommendation that we consult a site meeting be arranged for interested councillors to meet with the neighbours and with the appropriate council officer present. All right, so all those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. That then requires us now to move the full minutes of that same traffic. Thank you, yes. So I'll just, for the purposes of people listening at home, this item refers to Hannam Street, Bardwell Valley, where proposed changes to parking restrictions were made, that approval be given to installing no parking 5:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Saturday to Sunday, along the northern curb line of Hannam Street between John Street and Wilkins Street.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question firstly. How was this brought about? Because to me it's a very long time span. Speaking to some of the people that live there, they're asking the question, well, okay, if it's a matter of mitigating traffic, allowing a flow through of traffic through that part of the world, we can have a break from, say, 5:30 in the morning till, I don't know, 10 o'clock, and then 4 or 5 hours for people to be able to park and use the neighbourhood, so to speak, and then reduce it later in the evening.
Do you mind, Councillor Souness, we actually have Mr Morgan online.
Good. Excellent.
And so, Mr Morgan, are you with us online? Excellent. Thank you, Mr Morgan. We have a query in relation to the minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting on the 16th of February in relation to point 013 Hannam Street, Bardwell Valley. Could you please provide some detail as to why that decision was put forward as a recommendation?
Yes, Mayor, through you. That matter arose from a request from the community to look at parking restrictions in that street to make it flow better. There's some concerns at the moment. There's some restrictions through that street with the bus route. At certain times of the day, vehicles are parking on both sides of the street and causing obstruction. So the matter that's before Council tonight is a recommendation to restrict parking on one side so that bus service can flow through the day without having those restrictions.
Thank you, Mr Morgan. And that went out for community consultation, didn't it?
Yes, it did, Mayor, that's correct.
Well, we can refer,
That's what I'm saying, if there was a lot of responses, fair enough. If there were
Yeah.
2 or 3 people, then what we're doing effectively, we're disenfranchising one side of the street if there's a concern from a handful of people on the other side.
so from memory, sitting as chair of the traffic committee, it was distributed. Mr. Morgan, do you have the information in front of you that indicates how broad the consultation was and what the response rate was?
I do. I can add some light on that. So we did consult with residents in that area. 18 letters were sent out. We only received 7 responses. Residents were asked to consider 4 options, which is essentially no parking on the northern side was option 1, no parking on the southern side was option 2, option 3 was no parking on both sides, and option 4 was to retain the existing parking as is. We predominantly had 3 responses for option 1, which was no parking on the northern side. Only one resident supported restrictions on the southern side. 2 residents supported options on both sides, and a further responder provided an alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor
I'm
Souness?
comfortable with it, but I'd like to ask, again, an on-site meeting. I'm not pressing it right. Because it is a big change for people. They're taking away a whole heap of parking. I don't have the details exactly how long, but I looked at the maps on this. It's a fair bit of parking, and it's for a lot of hours. If I could understand if there was a break in the middle, I can get that. But it's designated, pretty much designated no parking for all day, from 5 in the morning till 9 at night, Monday to Friday, and the same on the weekend. So if we could ask for an on-site meeting, if someone would second that.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Saranossi. All right, we have a mover and a seconder that we, as per the previous motion, that we have an on-site meeting with interested councillors and the appropriate council officer and interested or impacted residents. So we'll, that motion is now before us. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Declare it carried. Are there any other items from 11.1?
14.14. I'm getting there.
Perhaps you should come to the traffic committee.
I wasn't allowed.
All councillors are welcome to the traffic
Okay,
committee.
I'll start coming.
14, was it?
I did it for 4 years, though. No, 14, yes, please.
Okay, so this is item 14, Midjubury Lane, Cogra. Proposed no parking, 7A.
Oh, no, sorry, 15.
15.
The one below.
Same lane.
Same lane, yeah. That's what I was
Proposed
confused.
changes to parking conditions. So the committee had made 3 recommendations there following the consultation there and around. That came about from memory in relation to the pick-up and drop-off requirements there. So there was some discussion about that. Is there, what is your concern with that one, Councillor Souness?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern mainly is going from 4 to 3 hours isn't a big game changer in this particular environment, given the exacerbation of the parking in that precinct. We've got I don't know what the new site's called, but the old Darrell East site, whatever the new name change has become, pushing cars into that precinct. The sporting groups that try to use the facilities there in Scarborough Park, the people that work their businesses in production, having parking vehicles and all this sort of stuff all over the place. If we had a dedicated, and it's no attack on Director of City Life, a dedicated group of rangers, they can't be everywhere, frequenting that part of the world on the weekends, we could have probably a lot of movement, a lot of change in that area, but it's not going to happen without that dedication in moving them along. And the issue that occurs there, it's all parked out. Kids are hopping out in amongst on the street, coming through cars to get into the sporting ground. So look, I don't mind if 3 hours is if 3 hours is what the committee came up with, let's at least change it to a trial period of 3 months and see if it does make any changes. But I do recommend it be a much shorter period to get the people that live in the Darrell Lee site to change their ways and not park in that particular part of the world where we need space for people frequenting the park, and we need the organisations, the business people that run out of Production Avenue and those side streets to not park their vehicles all over the place. Panel beaters, hire car vehicles, all
Okay.
sorts of stuff.
So then, so you would like to move an amendment that a report come to the Traffic Committee in 3 months' time, just based on a
Well,
review of...
I don't know how to do that because the sporting groups, you need to sort of, we need to
So-
discuss it with them, because otherwise how would we get feedback? How would we know?
No,
Okay,
Yeah, but
so...
not all of them though, General Manager.
So look, let's, if you're okay, councillor Souness, because there was quite a bit of consultation
Yeah,
done. What we
absolutely.
can do, let's give it a little bit of time to trial it. So can I suggest we say in 6 months' time, we just have a review and have a conversation with the sporting groups and see if it's working and residents?
Okay.
All right. Do I have a seconder for that additional
I'll
6-month
second
review?
it.
Second, councillor Hannah. All those in favour, say aye. Against, declare it carried. Do you have any other items, councillor Souness, or are we done?
We have one on the other.
Well, first of all, we'll do 11.1, which is the minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee meeting, 16th of February. Do I have a mover? Moved councillor Wyder, seconded councillor Douglas. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. I now move to the minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee meeting on the 9th of March. Councillor Barlow? Two point, 02021? Oh, 3-1.
3-1.
Okay,
Sorry,
so this
3-1.
is Bayview Street, Bexley amendments to operation of a church and school
Yeah.
located at 339 to 377 Forest Road.
I actually wanted to move it for an on-site meeting because the plans that we got are very obscure. When we found out about the tree, that they were just had a little drawing around, but the residents know nothing about it, and I feel that it's such a big change that they really need to have that on-site meeting. And the dentist on the corner, you know, was there at one stage, and he had a problem. Someone parked in his private driveway, his gate closed, the gate got broken, but the person, it was from the church, but that's different because that was at night. I don't know when it was, but they found the number plate. I presume the guy fixed the gate for him, but I really feel that it needs consultation because it's going to be a big change to the whole area, and the residents know nothing about it.
Thank you, councillor Barlow. So are you happy then? So you're suggesting an additional recommendation there that an on-site meeting takes place with interested councillors,
Yeah,
impacted
just to be
residents
deferred
and...
till- yeah, the recommendation was deferred until we have that on-site meeting.
Okay.
And all the interested residents, because they're going to be
Yep.
quite impacted, some of them.
Do we have
And
a
you can't
seconder?
read the plans.
Seconded, councillor Souness.
I was going to suggest, as a bit of a change to that way of having the meeting, have the meeting with interested councillors, obviously people from council offices and the church group first, and then introduce the residents later, because there'll be a bit of a argy-bargy, for want of a better word. We need to speak to that group, because people that don't know the background of this went to Land Environment Court. A lot of residents have had many issues over the years with people parking illegally in their driveways. People moving bins, parking in their drives, and people saying, "I don't care, find me if you like." Now that's not Bayside.
Yeah, all right.
So- But in saying that, we need to send a strong message out to the church that, okay, if these conditions are imposed, that's fine. However, you must live with those conditions and not create environments where you put your own cones out and you create your own slip lanes and whatever else I'm not against the school or the church or any organisation running their business, but they cannot reinvent the wheel and create different traffic environments for themselves. We've had many times rangers going down there and doing all sorts of things. They need to follow the letter of the law, like all of us in this room and all the wider community, and we need to send that message to that meeting and then have a meeting with the wider community so they can hear it as well, because they need to know that we're on the side of policing what's going on down there.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Chair.
Souness. So, just in relation to that, so there was quite a bit of discussion in relation to that, and it has a significant history. So, what I suggest then is that Mr. Morgan looks at a potential process where we can meet with residents who I think other Councillor Barlow's indicating really are not across what is proposed here. So maybe, with the expertise of council, they can determine who to meet with and plan it moving forward that way. Is that everyone happy with that?
No, but Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Saranowski.
I apologise for asking this silly question, but the church parishioners are human beings. I don't know what the drama is in getting the residents and the church together. But everyone's got to live in harmony, and the council to coordinate, to be a facilitator, so the residents can express their concerns, whatever they've got in relation to this church and the school firsthand. To have it like a secret meeting with the church first, and then go to the residents, well, I don't think that's appropriate. What have we got to hide? Let's get them all together.
Yeah.
The residents and the church, they're human beings. The residents got legitimate concerns, but we can easily solve it by everybody getting together on site, hearing the first hand of what's actually going on. If I can use the church, the Macedonian Church of Rockdale, they're in the same situation where there's not enough parking for the parishioners. Now, we can't be penalising any church for the fact that their parishioners decide to go to church. I think it's a good thing that people go to church. But I think these issues can be easily resolved by having both parties on site and hearing out their issues, and we will be facilitating it and addressing the issues. Now, it may be on goodwill, and maybe the car park where the dentist is, if maybe he or she, whoever owns the building, may make those parking spots available if there is a goodwill on all parties to live in harmony. So my suggestion to the mover is let's have one meeting with everybody together.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. So I think, Councillor Barlow, you're... sorry, Councillor Saranowski. So I think Councillor Barlow's original motion was around that, or amendment was around that the residents don't really understand what's happening. Is that correct?
It's all about, you don't want to surprise them because you can't, the plan is really hard to understand. They've got a median iron strip for 25, we don't know where it is even. There's moving parking spots, they're changing everything, and I think it's quite dramatic. So I feel that we have to speak to the residents because they're the ones that live there. And there's this 20-metre island that I think it says you can get over it. I don't understand. As I said, it's not a very good plan.
So really, all it is, it's just to explain the plans to residents, and then in the first instance, so it's purely just an education piece, and then if any issues arise from there, then we can go to next steps. Yeah, so it's just really a consultation with the mapping and the clarity around what is where. All right, that's fine. If you...
I think it's a great idea to get out there. Definitely there has been issues in the past, there's no doubt. I just have got a question to Mr. Morgan. I do know that, like Councillor Tunis has said, it's gone to the Land and Environment as well as Council Traffic Committee. Through you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Morgan, if it's okay, just to clarify how these recommendations came about from the Land and Environment Court, one, and two, just briefly, if Council were involved in this or negotiated this to get a positive outcome for Council and residents. as well as the
I
school.
think we might just take that question on notice, if you don't mind. Yeah, because it's quite complex and detailed, and all we're doing at this point in time is just explaining the maps to the residents. That's all we're doing. There's nothing else. So there's no debating or anything. It's just explaining them to the residents about what the plans that were approved by Traffic Committee. So if everyone's happy, we'll move that way. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. All right, are there any other items in the Traffic Committee meeting? Good, thank you. So I now move that the minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee meeting of the 9th of March 2022 be moved. Moved Councillor Nargi, seconded Councillor Fardell. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. I now move to item 11.3. So this is the minutes of the City Planning and Environment Committee meeting. Our very first committee meeting, which was held on the 9th of March 2022. Now, this has been requested to be pulled from the other items. So is there someone that would like to speak to that item? Councillor Werner?
Yes, please. Thank you. And this is CPE 22.006.
So just one moment, if you don't mind. What's the last three numbers?
006.
Oh,
so
we've
it's a
only got-
submission
yep.
about the new approach to rezonings, and the reason I wanted to pull that out.
So we just need a mover that we for that item. Someone happy to move? Councillor Fidel, second, and Councillor Nargi. Okay, you can speak to
Thank
the
you.
item.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this out because I think it's a really important change that the government wants to make, and I also want to commend Mayor Christina Curry for, I think you made a comment at that committee meeting that we send a letter to the Minister. I think it's really important that our residents know what this is about. I've got some prepared notes about this that was developed by Jamie Parker's office because one of his portfolios is planning, and I think it is really important to note that the government is concerned that site-specific rezonings are taking too long, and after consulting with industry, councils and the planning profession, but not the community, they're proposing to change planning rules to expedite the rezoning process. It reinforces the government's commitment to developer-driven planning, and it will erode the powers of elected community representatives on council and leaves no community in New South Wales safe from overdevelopment, and that's the problem with it. So developers will be able to initiate and pursue rezonings regardless of the council's view, and when acting as the rezoning authority, councils could face huge fines if they don't meet assessment deadlines. Opportunities for community input and public scrutiny will be withdrawn. The government will create a right of appeal for developers who are dissatisfied with a rezoning decision, but there will be no right of appeal for residents or local councils who wish to challenge a rezoning approval. Councils will no longer work with a proponent prior to lodgement, and gateway determinations will be removed, which means that the strategic merit of a proposal will no longer be assessed to decide whether or not an application should proceed, and this cuts out the precious opportunity for public oversight and community engagement. So I just wanted to make those comments because you know, it was a really detailed submission, and I think it's good to just emphasise those aspects. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Werner, and thank you for pulling that out because what is proposed is an absolute disgrace. They want to take away decision making from local councils. So where now we have an opportunity to have a say on whether a planning proposal is moves forward or not, that takes that away. So that does not give council any opportunity to put forward their views on it. And it is only us, council staff and residents, who truly understand the impact of planning proposals as well. So what they're proposing is totally unjust, and it's another example of just taking decision making away from people. So, you know, I think that, and we were very clear at the committee meeting that, you know, we really we condemn that proposal, actually, because it is not in the best interests of our community or any community across the state. So, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor
suggestion?
Saranowski.
Yeah, it's okay. Can I make an addition to point 5, that we write to the Local Government Association and ask them to take up with the Minister. My understanding is I think it's every week or every 2 weeks, the President of the Association meets up with the government officials. I'm sure they're totally against this, but if we can just formally write to them and ask them to make representations on our behalf.
Great suggestion. Great suggestion, Councillor Saranowski. Councillor Fardell, are you happy to accept that? Yep, thank you. We'll we'll add that there. Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Douglas?
Madam Mayor, there was a slight amendment to the minutes that Fausto was reviewing. I'm not sure if that has come forward yet.
What's that in relation to, Councillor Douglas?
22004. We had a significant discussion about bike tracks and not relegating bike tracks to secondary streets, and it was my understanding from the meeting that we took up the General Manager's suggestion that bike tracks only be relegated to secondary streets where there is no clear safe division between traffic and bikes on main streets.
So are you referring to the draft submission in relation to design and place state environmental planning policy?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. So, Douglas. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Yeah. So that's the next item. So we'll just deal with the original, the earlier item, which was 006, the submission.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion there? So, well, that's received and noted, so we don't need to change anything. We're adding Councillor Saranowski's. So we have a mover to Councillor Saranowski moves, seconded Councillor Wada. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Now we can move towards the item. So,
Madam Mayor. Sorry.
Yes.
You forgot me. I pulled out. I think you have. I think I pulled out CPE 22.003.
Yep, so we'll go.
Are we coming to that?
We'll come to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're still on, Councillor Douglas has pulled out 004, and in relation to, there was just some clarification around bike paths. So that was to be added to the submission from.
And I have reviewed the video footage, and Fausto has agreed that it would be added, but it hasn't been added yet. So I don't know what the correct process for that is, but I wanted to flag it.
not on mine. Okay, so, councillor Douglas, are you happy then if, we add that second point, which was discussed in the meeting, that where full and safe separation cannot be achieved, the cycleway network should be prioritised in secondary streets.
Yes, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was one of the original. Do you need to move a second?
Can we just have a little clarity around that, Madam Chair? When we say cycleway networks, is that a formalised cycleway with dedicated lanes for cycling, or is it on a map that says go down this street you can because you're a bike, because we've painted bicycle symbols on the ground? Because I see a lot of people, a lot of bike riders cycle along the Grand Parade, and that's not deemed a cycleway. Our cycleways are footpaths and so on along the Grand Parade or secondary streets.
So, Councillor Souness, this was purely in relation to a submission that was being made. So all it does is that it says that we consider this when in any future, that it be considered in any future planning. So there's quite a bit of discussion.
All I'm asking is some clarity around what we're saying, so we're on the same page when we move forward. Because there are dedicated cycleways that we have in our LGA. Not that they're very good, because there's a lot of disconnection. But we also have a map that says you can cycle here, which isn't a formalised cycleway, because there's parked cars there, there's all sorts of impediments, but we call it a cycleway.
Okay, it's when we're planning new cycleways, it's the dedicated cycleways. Well, yeah, so as part of our, there is a strategy around connecting our areas through cycle opportunities. So that's what that's about. Yes. Yeah. All right, so we have made that moved. Councillor Douglas, seconded Councillor Werner. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. So they've been added. Now we have another item in those minutes for Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This relates to 22.003, the draft local heritage grant policy.
Yes.
Now, this fell out of a resolution of council on the 9th of February 2022. Now, that resolution had a point 3. My question is, this is silent on point 3. So my question is point 3 in the pipeline? If it is in the pipeline, can I please have a date when point 3 will be discussed and come to council?
Can I ask you to clarify what point 3 is?
Most definitely.
Thank you.
And this is my piggyback amendment that in fact was agreed to by the movers of the motion, and it's point number 3, which says that council provide a report back to council regarding reinstating the annual House of the Year awards, covering several categories with a particular focus on sympathetic restoration and or additions. So if this hasn't been discussed at the committee level, my question is, when is it going to be discussed? Because this has been bundled into a resolution of council. And as you know, Madam Mayor, I'm a firm believer in truth in sentencing.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hannah. So from memory, that in relation to did you look at the attached report which articulated the information in there?
No, is it in there, Councillor, Madam Mayor? Because it's certainly not in the. It's certainly not in
from
the
memory.
item number.
From memory, I thought we had discussed that, but if you will give us a moment, we will just go back and see if we can find the detail in the report. It was item 3. So, Can we just clarify, councillor Hannah, when it was raised at the original meeting, was that part of a report or a question?
No, it was part of the resolution.
Was it a motion though?
Yeah, it was a notice of motion put forward by councillors
Okay.
Sarafinovsky and Barlow, and the resolution was amended.
Yeah, thank you. We just
with-
needed
with
the
the
right
consent.
number.
Yes. So it's point number 3 of that actual resolution of council.
Thank you,
yeah.
We'll have a look. Thank you, councillor. It would have been the first meeting, so 9th of February.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Hannah is 100% right.
Thank you, councillor Saranovsky. We'll just cross-check it on the document. So we can add that here, or the next committee report. Thank you, councillor Hannah. So it is technically still a resolution from that original motion. So even though it wasn't part of the committee report, it is still a resolution of council. Therefore, it has to be acted upon. So it still stands, although it wasn't in that report, it still stands that as part of the original motion that council will report back regarding reinstating the annual House of the Year awards. So at the next appropriate committee, we'll have a report that provides that information. Thank you. All right, are there anything else from those minutes? All right, would someone have it move those minutes be accepted? Move councillor Naji, seconding councillor Jansen. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Oh, thank you. All right, so now we're going to move to the notices of motion, and the next notice of motion is in relation to climate change mitigation and adaptation plan. And I do believe that we did have a registered speaker who has now arrived, so that was good timing, Mr. Bell. So I invite you to come up, and this item is 12.3, and we have Mr. Stephen Bell, affected neighbour, speaking for the motion. So just to reiterate, because you weren't here earlier, you've got 5 minutes to state your points, please. And there will be a 1-minute warning bell.
Thank you very
just
much.
So you know.
Thank you. As the Chair pointed out, I am a concerned neighbour. I've been living in Banksia with my family for just 4 years. But I'm also an advisor to banks, insurers and wealth management companies on climate change. I've got a history advising insurance companies on physical risk, and I've got to say it was really pleasing to see this come onto the agenda tonight, and I'd like to commend Councillor Werner for putting forward the motion. It's the type of motion that is sorely missed in a lot of local government areas, and I think it's an opportunity for leadership by Bayside. Councillor Werner in the motion has put forward 2 potential examples of climate change risk management plans. Those are good examples. Those are examples that the industry looks at positively. But I'd like to make 5 points tonight. The first being that those examples, while they are fantastic and while they should be recognised as best practice of this day, they shouldn't be recognised as the standard upon which the council should be aiming to achieve. We need within our community to really recognise not just the physical risks that are at play within our local area, but also the financial opportunities, financing opportunities that we have within our community to make our community safer. The second point that I'd like to raise is that I think we're all very well aware that banks, insurers and others are researching this very issue. They're spending millions of dollars to better understand this issue. Our governments are spending millions of dollars to better understand this issue. Banks and insurers are not doing it for ideological reasons, and nor should we. Banks and insurers, just like this council, should be doing it because they know that there is a cost, and there is a cost to inaction. And so I would implore the council and our community to support this motion and the subsequent work in full. I think a lot has changed since the climate mitigation, risk mitigation plans have been put forward by Wollongong and Bayside down in Victoria. And the Bayside plan itself is actually a really good example because Bayside down in Victoria suffers from quite a lot of flood risk. It's also got a really mixed socioeconomic profile, just like our own community. There are homes within Bayside that will be inundated by rising seas, just as there are areas within Bayside here in New South Wales that will also be inundated by rising seas within our lifetime. And the point that I'd like to raise is that often these risks are not insurable. Insurance companies themselves insure assets, they don't insure land. So there may well be individuals here tonight, their assets that perhaps they might pass on to their children will not be able to be insured unless action is taken today. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Since those two action plans that Councillor Werner has put forward were published, a lot has actually changed. Our federal government has committed hundreds of millions of dollars in support for mitigation programs, but the gap there for local councils is on understanding what your ask is. And so the first step that you need to take is to develop the plan just like that's been put forward. You can't access that funding unless you've got a very clear idea of what your vulnerability is, not your risk, what your vulnerability is, and what you need to do to make your residents safer. The last thing that I'd like to just raise this evening is that governments and the private sector are already funding risk mitigation. Don't just think about funding sources coming from state and federal governments through grant programs, etc. Think about the private sector that has global capital mobilising for this exact reason, working alongside some of our bigger banks who they've also got a part to play in this. They don't want to see their collateral at risk. So you can reach out beyond governments, beyond state and federal governments to actually solve this issue. And to round out, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our council and our community to show leadership in Australia. We've got leadership up in the Sunshine Coast in this very same issue in Queensland. We've got leadership up on the central coast of New South Wales, all the way down to Bayside, as Councillor Werner and others have put forward. So I would encourage you to invest in this. It is an impost on council resources, but without this investment, our community will be at risk. Thank you. I think I hit time, straight on.
Yeah, that was perfect.
And thank you for the opportunity. My apologies.
No, thank you, Mr. Bell, for joining us and sharing that information with us tonight. Councillors, earlier tonight we considered item 10.7, the report on the organisational structure, and I'm pleased to note, as you would have seen in the organisational structure, that one of the priorities in the proposed structure is the creation of an environment and resilience team. So that's bringing together staff from strategic planning, resource recovery and the general managers unit. So this unit is something that will be established this financial year, and it will focus on building on the range of environmental initiatives that our staff are already working on, and which I described in detail on my Mayoral Minute last council meeting, and again tonight in relation to the renewable energy. So there's a lot of work being done, and I'm pleased to see the proposal in the General Manager's report. There is that focus to increase our capacity in this important area, and I'm advised that their first priorities will, when this new team is formed as part of the new organisational structure, will include and are already working towards an urban forest plan for Bayside and a climate mitigation plan. So those things are in train there. So I just wanted to highlight that to councillors and to people listening, that there's a lot of work being done here particularly. So we do have a motion before us. So I have a mover, Councillor Werner, a seconder, Councillor Douglas. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Werner?
Thank you. So first of all, thanks so much for coming along, Mr. Bell. It was a really detailed and important information, so thanks for that. So I just want to emphasise that this is about a plan that's not just about mitigation, it's also about adaptation as well. So, and having an overall plan can also show us what our vulnerabilities are, and I think that's one of the things that I took from what you said, is that's really important. We need to know what our vulnerabilities are so that we can get the funding to address those. Because, you know, what we've seen is that floods are becoming more common. The recent floods were the most severe that we've ever seen. And together with the 2019 bushfires and the pandemic, and these are the kinds of events that are made worse by climate change. And as I said, on the 9th of February this year, the Insurance Council of Australia has made a public statement on climate change, which reads in part, "Climate change is occurring along a rapid and severe pathway, and without intervention, it presents a serious risk to environments, economies, and communities worldwide. The impacts of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions are becoming increasingly evident through the occurrence of more frequent and intense extreme weather events, sea level rise, and global mean temperature increase." Now, the thing is, I also want to say that it's wonderful what Bayside Council is already doing, and I think it's really important to have that, unit, that group of people working on resilience and things like that. I also want to commend the Mayoral Minutes from today, and would like to acknowledge the significance of the new 100% renewable energy contract that Council has recently entered with the Southern Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils. And this is excellent for mitigation of climate change, but it doesn't actually address the adaptation side of it. So at our 9th of February meeting, Councillor Tsounis asked what we're proposing to do in response to the evidence on climate change. So that's why I had a look at the plans that other councils have made. And I'm not saying that I know what the answer is, but I think this is something that is really worthwhile for council staff to have a look at. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So to save time and other resources, we can learn from and build on what the climate mitigation and adaptation plans of others. Of course, the two ones that I had a look at was the Wollongong Council's 2020 to 2022 Climate Change Mitigation Plan and the Victoria's Bayside City Council Climate Emergency Action Plan 2020 to 2025. They're both very detailed, and they've got practical and actionable items that will make a difference. And I recommend that Bayside Council examines both documents for inspiration and forms its own draft climate change mitigation and adaptation plan. The General Manager has made a comment that it would take substantial amount of staff time and research and internal consultation, which I think is very important. And I want to suggest that making a climate change mitigation and adaptation plan would be a most valuable use of our staff's time. And as I've said before, failing to plan is planning to fail. We know that the climate is changing and that the effects of climate change will become more severe, and that this poses a serious risk to environments, economies and communities, including our own community here in Bayside. And surely protecting our local communities in any way that we can is the most important, or at least one of the most important things that we can do. And it's also what the state government expects us to do. So the net zero plan states that achieving net zero emissions will require more than action from state and Commonwealth governments, and it requires action from local government, businesses, communities and individuals. So this would be a great way that our council can plan its own actions, and ways that we can collaborate with businesses and community groups and individuals to adapt to climate change, and I hope that you support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Barlow?
I congratulate Greta for being so passionate about it, but I believe that we actually should defer it because of the note that having this new unit, and I feel that we're putting the cart before the horse, and we really need to look at it. And because of the department is changing, so the council is starting to look at it, but you can't just take staff from everywhere and start doing it when we're going to have a specialised unit. So I would actually move an amendment that this is deferred until we have our presentation with the new organisation structure and find out exactly what this unit becomes established. So you're really jumping the gun if you approve this tonight.
So, Councillor Werner, Councillor Barlow's got a suggestion to amend that to defer it. Are you happy to accept that?
I will, if I can have a right of reply, please.
You would, yeah. So you're happy to accept that we defer this until the new structure is more information's been provided and the new structure starts to form. All right. So that's been accepted, and so do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Awada. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to ask a question. I can see there's two plans up there, and look, I'm not saying I'm a skeptic or otherwise. There is climate change occurring. At the rate is the conversation, how fast it's occurring, okay? My question is, why do we need to develop our own localised action plan or mitigation plan? We have neighbouring councils. Shouldn't we do this in collusion with others? Because surely our plan would be very similar to the one at Georges River, would be very similar to the one at Sutherland, at Randwick and so on, because we have the same issues. I just don't understand why we have to invest individually, go to consultants, put together all this effort to create a plan that will tell us, okay, the sea level will rise. Again, it's an arbitrary thing because there's no specific scientific testing for our part of the world. There is a more global situation for New South Wales and Sydney, and there will be sea level rise in the future, but wouldn't be a constant right across New South Wales? That's what I don't get. Why we have to invest, and I would imagine this would go into the millions to develop this sort of action plan. Why don't we develop it through collusion with the New South Wales government and through our local councils, all the other councils that are facing the same issues along the coast. I'm not going to say the council that's out at Broken Hill has the same issues, but the councils within 20 kilometres of us along the coast have the same concerns. So that's just a question. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know the answer to that, and it's just plaguing me because we tend to run off and do our own thing, where there are organisations that we can work with, such as Cooks River Alliance and all those other organisations that look at specific things. SS Rock. We need to develop a plan that encompasses the entire coastline, or maybe 100 kilometres either side of where we are. I don't know the ins and outs of what happens up at the Tweed Heads. I don't know what happens down at Ulladulla, but I know what happens within our part of the world. Surely must be similar. So why does each council have to reinvent its own wheel?
Yeah, Councillor Souness, thank you. When we have a future report that comes to committee, we can have a bit more information and detail to try and understand, you know, what that looks like across councils and so on. So, all right, is there any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to thank the Speaker, and I think that this is a really important issue. And our Micromex research as part of the Community Strategic Plan showed us that our community are really wanting action on climate change, and this is something that is important to them. But based on the information in the motion from the GM, as well as the organisational restructure and previous information, I would be supporting Councillor Barlow's amendment, because I believe this perfectly aligns to what that new expert business unit would be doing. So I would be supportive of that business unit being tasked with the request to do the initial research and present back to committee some options on what the scope of a climate change mitigation and adaptation plan may entail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Is there further? Councillor Douglas?
I know at the February 9th meeting we also made a decision to have a climate change information session for councillors, and I would just ask that we perhaps revisit why a climate mitigation plan is important for local council to address Councillor Souness's question at that information session as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Douglas. We can sort of see all the moving parts now coming together and you know, all the things that we need to consider, and so I think it's all coming together really well with the new unit, where they can have that specialist oversight and clear direction. All right, so that we have an amendment there, and so we had a mover and a seconder for the amendment, and so all those in favour of the amendment say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. So the amendment then becomes the motion. So now we vote on the motion. So all those... Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Werner. Yeah. No, that's fine. Apologies, Councillor Werner, please.
Okay.
Right of
Thank
reply.
you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so, I mean, I am disappointed that this is getting, putting back, that we're not doing it straight away, because I think time is of the essence with this. But I think it is the most important thing is that we do make a plan, that it's not just sort of individual things that we're doing, and it's not just, okay, we're putting some solar panels here and we're doing this there. What we need is an overall plan, and we need to know those individual, the vulnerabilities. And one of the reasons why we do, I think, need our own plan that has the detail about our specific area, that's not just sort of an overall New South Wales plan, is because we do have specific vulnerabilities. There are certain areas that get flooded more than others. There are certain areas that are closer to the you know, closer to the beach, whatever. Like there's different areas, and so we need to know those specific details so that we can get the funding to you know to adapt and to do the things that we need to do to keep our residents safe. So I think for that reason it is really important that we do have our own plan. But of course, if there's any economies of scale where we can work with other councils, like maybe SS Rock again, or other groups, then of course we should do that as well. But the most important thing is that we do have a plan and that we do have it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. All right, so we are now, the amendments.
Sorry, can I just
has
ask
been-
a question, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Werner, through you, if it's okay? I don't want to put you on the spot. There's been funding mentioned by the Speaker and yourself. What is the funding? What will that cover? Will it cover the actual development of the plan or implementation of initiatives? Do you know what the funding will cover? Or
I'm not exactly sure. I can't speak for Mr. Bell, but I believe that there is a funding through the state government for resilience. So this is I believe it's not for making the plan, but it's for specific amounts of money to adapt to climate change. But to be honest, I haven't looked at the specifics in the state government.
Thank you. All right, so no further speakers. The amendment becomes a motion. We'll vote on the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. All right, that leaves us with the next notice of motion. This is motion 12.4. This is this one is looking at some research, investigation into a potential pump track in Sir Joseph Banks. So we have that motion on the screen in front of us. Is a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Morrissey. And Councillor Jansen, would you like to speak to the motion?
So thank you, Councillor Souness. A pump track is a worldwide phenomenon that's not really hit Australia yet, but it is a facility that engages young people, and because of the nature of the facility, it can be accessed by all sorts of things that can be ridden. So not just bicycles, it can be accessed by skateboards, by scooters, but even by people on wheelchairs. So this is simply asking for an accessible facility for young people. There were a number of groups that were established during lockdown. So there's currently a group of 300 that exists on social media that has been advocating for this facility. There's another group on Instagram that has around 200 members in support of a pump track. There is no pump track nearby, so I am believing that this would act as a kind of a regional centre for all of Bayside. So this motion is just asking for an investigation into a potential pump track facility for young people in our area that will aid with their mental health and well-being, and that a report be provided back to the relevant committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Any other speakers? Councillor Douglas?
I bloody love this motion. I really do. I really want to see your pump track, and I want to see another pump track over our side of the bay. I am desperate to get out there with my kids. Well, it is actually, when you're a cyclist, you can't ride very safely between Kaima and Botany through the tunnel. It's like a nightmare. So there is a bit of a divide, because it's quite hard for me as a cyclist to get to Botany. But yeah, I want to see these for the kids, for the adults. I think that kids are bored. They need to get off the screens. We need to give them things to do that are local, that are free, that build their skills to do other things other than illegal activities or hooning or whatnot. So I just love this motion so much, and I've been trying to investigate if there's a space likewise on this side of the bay, so we could have one on either side. And I agree with you that it will bring people from other areas. It will put us on the map for parents, for families to come and visit. And you only have to go down to the skate park at West Botany Street to see people come for that facility. Whole families come. They come and watch their daughters skate. They watch their sons skate. They film each other skate. It's become just this beautiful community space. And it's different to a skate park. So thank you for bringing the motion, Councillor
Thank you,
Jackson.
Councillor Douglas. Councillor Muscat?
Yes, I'd just like to raise the fact that as a council we need to be responsible in this area, because the local children are designing and making their own versions of a pump track in the parks. So for safety issues, I think it's vital that we support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Any further discussion? All right, I'll put it.
Just a question. I'm assuming that when the report comes to council, it will fully cover any liability and insurance ramifications?
Yes,
And any costs
with
associated with that?
as with
Yes,
our
thank you.
skate park and so
Yeah,
on,
thank you.
everything's
Thank
carefully considered. Councillor Barlow?
I was only going to make a comment to say I have learnt something tonight because I've never heard of a pump track. Not having grandchildren and only having BMX tracks in my backyard, so
It's very
this is
similar.
We'll go there.
Very different. No, I haven't got it now, but I used to have it. And the whole neighbourhood came.
All right, thank you, councillors. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. We now have a motion in front of us, which is 12.5, which is Transport for New South Wales consultation with residents of O'Connell Street and Caulfield Road, Brighton Le Sands. I have a mover, Councillor Saranowski, seconded Councillor Awada. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to firstly, I just received a text from Councillor McDougall, who's asked that he be accepted as an apology. He's tied up in the city, so I just asked that we formally accept his apology.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Did you want to speak to 12.5?
It's Madam Mayor, it's pretty simple. It's outlined in a very brief notice of motion. Transport New South Wales refused to talk to the residents of O'Connell Street and Crawford Road, which is pretty stupid. The government agency, they're supposed to be working for us. We pay their wages, we pay the taxes. They blatantly refuse to talk to the residents now. We've got concerns or seeking clarification in terms of the construction of the M6 toll, which is blown out double what it was budgeted for. So all we're asking council is to endorse, to write to the government, asking the minister to ask the Transport New South Wales to at least have a dialogue with the residents on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Any further discussion?
Just a comment. There was an M6 meeting for the Moorfields estate, which is on the other side, which is impacted. They said they contacted everyone. No, they didn't. I don't know who they contacted. I spoke to the manager. Yes, I went there thinking they're going to create parking behind the shops with the loss of parking. Oh no, they were just there to talk to everyone. They were surprised that there was that many people there because the estate councillor and there's a community group there that letterboxed everyone. I said, how did you contact the people? Oh, we door knocked. Somebody got a letter in one letterbox, but no one got one further up the street. So I believe they have a meeting every week or every couple of weeks with council, do they? They said they have meetings with council.
There are regular meetings.
Okay, right. At the next meeting, could you ask how they correspond with the residents? Because I'm sorry, they've said that they did all this. No one knew about it. It was done, virtually the residents contacted everybody to let them know. So it was disappointing. I think they were in shock that there's that many people there. But they need to be asked continually I'd really like the answer to how they notified the Moorfields estate, who they notified, because there was one house down one end of President Avenue halfway up, none at the other end of the street. So it's a matter of they've got to be more caring because it's going to impact those residents the whole lot, so.
Yeah, it will. Thank you, councillor Barlow. We'll make sure
I too was at
we do
that meeting, that street meeting, or the park meeting, and it was all about keeping people informed. There was just some placards. You could ask some questions, but if it was anything too complicated, there was no answer to it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We're going to have to wear this. I feel sorry for the people in that particular street and in some of the other streets heading south, because the conversation around that is when you ask, so what's the impact on the people beyond President Avenue, which by the way is going to be, is it 6 metres it's going to be raised or 3? 9 metres is going to be raised. 9 metres with a little habitat of 3? 3 metres. No, it's 6, because 3 from the top, bottom. Anyway, it's all platitudes. It's the same issue we had when we had the conversation around the M5 tollway. They just palm you off constantly. And for the people that live south of President Avenue, there's going to be a lot of pain with a lot of rat running that people aren't aware of. Tudor Avenue is going to be chock-a-block. Forget about cycleways on there.
And just
That's one of the areas that will be a problem.
Thank you. And just to make the point, I think Councillor Barlow was at the Traffic Committee with me when they presented, and we were very clear at that Traffic Committee around the appropriate community consultation, and they had actually assured us, which is quite disappointing. So again, we'll reiterate the importance of speaking with all residents that are going to be impacted and improve the community consultation. And we're also very clear that the impacts during works and the amenity and the pathways and the accessibility for driveways and all those things, and then at the completion of the project that they restore the area to an outstanding standard, because there's a lot in there. So we'll certainly continue to put that pressure on them. Yeah, Councillor Werner.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, can I? Oh.
Sorry, Councillor Werner, then Councillor Saranowski.
So I went to the that sort of community consultation in inverted commas as well, and the thing is that they are planning a bike path that sort of to make up for some of the effects that are going to be on local residents, and which is good. But some of that bike path also goes through some endangered ecological communities as well, and I was just wondering. There's also an opportunity to increase connectivity though with some of the other bike paths. One of the people there said that they could organise a meeting with councillors so that we can better understand what some of those effects are and what's proposed, because they said that they're still working on that bike path. I mean, the land has already been allocated, but just some of the more detailed design, it would be really good to get some more information and for councillors to be updated on that as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Werner. We can request some more detail around those. All right, no further discussion. All those in favour say aye. Oh, sorry, Councillor Saranowski, sorry. Please go ahead.
Can I just,
You have right of reply as well.
Can I just, I agree with everything that's been said. Just two things. When we do approach the Transport New South Wales, if they can consider not holding meetings at 4 o'clock, because most people either pick up their children or they're still at work, and if they could do it on a Saturday morning, where it's more convenient for more residents. But can I just remind the council, Transport New South Wales initially, when they announced the M6, wanted to give Bayside Council 0, I repeat, 0 in community facilities. It's only because Mr. Camper, our local member, fought tooth and nail with the Transport New South Wales and the former Minister Constance, where Mr. Camper kept raising it in Parliament almost on a daily basis, and they got sick and tired of hearing him, and they called him in and said, what do you want us to do for you? Because Transport New South Wales councillors, they don't care about us. They didn't take any of our suggestions. And you're right, Councillor Barlow, they're going to kill off the shops on President Avenue. They're going to lose all their parking spots. and they're all small family-owned businesses. They don't want to contribute to anything. So, in a nutshell, Madam Mayor, if we can, when we do speak to Transport New South Wales, I know they hate me, but that's okay. I'm there to fight for the residents. And when they do have their so-called tick boxes of meeting with the residents, that it be at a reasonable time where the residents can turn up, and if they can be on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon, because most people have got jobs 9 to 5, and they hold the meeting at 4 o'clock. And Councillor Bullow and Councillor Innes and Councillor Warner, 100%. There was no notification. It was only because former Councillor Field and Facebook, were aware of it. And then in our notice of motion, Transport New South Wales aren't interested in talking to the residents there. And all they want to do is get information to put their mind at ease. Thank you, councillors.
No, well said. Good point, Councillor Saranowski. So we'll add that in communications with them. All right, that takes us. So all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. This takes us to 12.6. This is a notice of motion for traffic measures for Emmeline Street, Ramsgate Beach. A mover is Councillor Saranowski, second
Yes, I'll move it.
Councillor Morrissey. Is there any discussion?
I met with the residents as well. They approached us at the Mayoral mobile office. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it is as said in the motion that there are numerous illegal turns being made into Emmeline Street. It's a very narrow street that is really only used for residents, and the residents have asked that either the street be blocked off entirely or some sort of measures taken to stop these illegal turns coming into the street. I rode past that street on my way home from the mobile office, and it was very clear that there were very large drag racing burnout marks along the street. It's visually evident that people are using this strip because it is a long straight strip for social nuisance behaviour, public nuisance behaviour. And there's also very little sidewalk on that street, so it does have a congestion effect of fast moving vehicles moving illegally and coming the wrong way, congested with pedestrians who are trying to walk without a footpath, an adequate footpath, and apparently the street is also used a lot for people going to the beach as well, so it puts families at risk. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Douglas. All those in favour say aye. Against?
Aye.
Do you want right of reply, Councillor Saranowski?
No.
Okay. Against? No. I declare the motion carried. All right, that takes us to, I believe there's a petition to be presented tonight. Councillor Awada, did you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I've got a petition. Thanks with the mobile office we had at Bexley last Saturday. Good turnout. Local residents, I think some of the residents spoke about the increase in traffic on Stony Creek Road and Forest Road. And as we know, and I think they've spoken to Councillor Hannah, Councillor Barlow, few residents came with different issues. Now, obviously the M5 East, the introduction of toll have caused all this, we knew. So an email was sent. I think it's been also a petition with that. It's been received by a resident living at Salisbury Avenue, and they put a petition to have a prevent the right turn out of the Salisbury Avenue, because a lot of traffic is going into the inside streets, avoiding the traffic on Forest Road. So I believe Mr. Morgan has got a copy of the petition as well as the email, and I'm told that the policy before it comes to council, it would have to go to the Corporate Performance Committee first. So I'd like to present you with the petition tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Awada. All right. We now move to item 13. This is questions with notice. Are there any questions with notice? Councillor Douglas?
I have put 3 questions of notice forward. they're up on the screen. Do I need to read them out? or
No,
what's the
that's
process?
fine. Thank you. So, for councillors' interest, those questions are listed there. Thank you. Are there any further questions with notice? Councillor Werner?
Yep, can I just send it through to the, sorry. I've got a question. Can I send it through to, the minute keepers? Who would, because Fausto's not here, so who would I send it to?
Send it to Michael Mamo.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we can add that then onto the agenda. Are there any other questions with notice? All right, there being no further questions with notice, there's no confidential reports. Therefore, councillors, I close the meeting at 10:13 p.m.